She left me for her ex and posted, "Real love always finds its way back, red heart," to justify it publicly. I didn't react. Months later, that same ex left her again, and she started watching my profile every single day. I need you to understand something. What we had was real, but what I feel for him is different. It's deeper. It's something I can't ignore. She said that to me on a Tuesday night. Not a fight night. Not after an argument. Not after anything I did. She said it on a Tuesday night while I was sitting across from her at the same dinner table where, just the week before, she had laughed so hard at something I said that she knocked over her glass of water. I didn't say anything back. Not because I had nothing to say. I had everything to say. I had 3 years of things to say. But something in me went completely quiet, like a room where someone just cut the power. And what I didn't know in that moment was that the silence I gave her that night was going to outlast everything she thought she was running toward. I should tell you a little bit about where we were before all of this. If you enjoy real stories like this, subscribe, because what happened next changed everything for me. 26 years old. Together for 3 years. Living in the same city, not yet living together, but close enough that we had a drawer at each other's places. Her name was Cassandra. She went by Cass. That's all the background you need. The thing about Cass was that she was the kind of person who made everything feel intentional. Every plan she made felt considered. Every word she used felt chosen. When she said she loved you, she looked at you like she'd thought it through. That's why it hit so differently when it came apart. Because it didn't feel random. It felt like a decision she had been slowly making for a long time, and I had just been the last one to find out. His name was Owen. She and Owen had dated for about 1.5 years before we met. They had broken up, or more accurately, he had broken up with her, about 8 months before Cass and I started seeing each other. I knew about him. She hadn't hidden him. But she had also told me, clearly and more than once, that it was over. That Owen was someone she had learned from. Someone she had outgrown. That she was glad it ended because it led her to me. I believed her. I had no reason not to. The first time I noticed something was different, we were at a mutual friend's birthday gathering. A rooftop thing, casual, maybe 15 people. I was talking to someone near the drinks table when I glanced across the space and saw Cass. She was on her phone. That wasn't unusual. But her face was. She was smiling at her screen in a way I hadn't seen in a while. Not a polite smile. Not a funny meme smile. The kind of smile that happens when your body reacts before your brain can tell it to stop. I remember thinking, and then I let it go. That was the first mistake. Not the biggest one, but the first one. About 2 weeks after that, she started being less available. Not dramatically. Not in a way that would make a normal person suspicious. Just shifted. Replies that used to come in 3 minutes started coming in 40. Plans that used to be automatic started needing checking. She was still warm when we were together. Still present. But there was something underneath it now. A current. Like she was thinking about something else even when she was looking at you. I asked her once, gently, if everything was okay. She said yes. She was just stressed with work. I nodded. I made her tea. I should have asked a different question. The Tuesday it happened. There was no big build-up. No screaming. No dramatic reveal. She came over. We ordered food. We watched something. I couldn't even tell you what. And then somewhere around 9 o'clock, she turned to me and said she needed to talk. I turned the TV off. She sat with her hands in her lap for a second, and then she said, "Owen reached out a few weeks ago." I didn't move. We've been talking. A lot. And I know that's not okay. I know I should have told you sooner. But the more we talked, the more I realized that I still feel something for him that I can't explain. I looked at her. "He wants to try again," she said. And I think I wanted to. The room was very quiet. "I didn't plan for this," she said. "I need you to know that." I looked at her for a long time. And then I said, "Okay." Just that. One word. She blinked. "Okay." "Yeah," I said. "Okay." I think she expected me to argue. To beg. To fall apart in front of her and give her something to either walk away from cleanly or something to soften her guilt. I didn't give her either. "I'm going to need some space," I said. "You should go." She sat there for another few seconds like she wasn't sure what to do with that. Then she picked up her bag. She paused at the door. "I'm really sorry," she said. "I know," I said. And she left. I sat in that apartment for about an hour without moving. Not crying. Not angry. Just sitting. There's a specific kind of feeling that comes after something like that. Not the grief yet, because grief takes a second to arrive. It's more like standing in a room after someone's taken all the furniture out. The walls are still there. The floor is still there. But everything that made it a place is gone. And you're just standing in the echo of it. The next morning, I woke up, made coffee, and did the one thing I knew would either help me or destroy me. I opened her profile. I don't know why I did it. I knew it was a bad idea. I knew what I was going to find. And I found it. Posted at 11:47 p.m. the night before. A photo. Her and Owen. She was laughing, head tilted toward him, his arm around her shoulder. The caption, "Real love always finds its way back, red heart." I stared at it for maybe 30 seconds. Then I put my phone face down on the counter, poured my coffee, and went to get ready for work. I didn't comment, didn't react, didn't message her, nothing. Because here's what I understood in that moment. She hadn't posted that for Owen. She'd posted it for everyone watching, including me. It was a public declaration designed to make the choice feel romantic instead of what it actually was. Someone choosing to go backward because going backward felt safer than going forward. And I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of watching me respond to it. If she wanted a story, she was going to have to write it without me in it. The first few weeks were hard in a way I hadn't fully anticipated. Not because I was devastated in an unmanageable way, but because grief has a texture to it that nobody really prepares you for. It's not just the big moments, it's the small ones. It's reaching for your phone to send her something funny and then remembering. It's cooking and making the wrong amount. It's Saturday mornings, which used to have a shape, suddenly having nothing in them. I let myself feel it. I didn't rush past it or pretend it wasn't there. But I also didn't drown in it. I went back to the gym, not in a movie montage way, just because movement helped. Because doing something with your body when your mind is working too hard is one of the oldest solutions that actually works. I called my friend Garrett Moore. Garrett had known me since college and had the useful quality of never telling you what you wanted to hear. When I told him what happened, he said, "She went back to the guy who already left her once. That's not a love story. That's a rerun." I didn't say anything to that, but I thought about it for a long time. About a month after the breakup, something shifted. It was subtle at first. I started noticing that my story views had a consistent presence. One account, almost every time I posted anything. Even the mundane stuff, gym check-ins, a photo of food, a random thought I typed out. I didn't check whose account it was immediately. I told myself it didn't matter. But one evening, I checked. It was Cass. I closed the app. I didn't post anything about it. Didn't reach out. Didn't acknowledge it in any way. I just noted it, filed it somewhere in the back of my head, and kept moving. Here's the thing about moving on that people don't tell you. It's not a single moment where you decide, and then it's done. It happens in layers. First, you stop checking their profile obsessively. Then you stop accidentally starting to type their name when you're texting someone else. Then you stop reaching for your phone when something good happens, out of old habit. Then, and this is the one that sneaks up on you, you stop comparing every new thing to them. I worked through those layers slowly. No shortcuts. And somewhere around the 2-month mark, I had a realization. I hadn't been happy for a while before she left. Not unhappy in a way I could have pointed to. But looking back, there had been a low-grade restlessness in our relationship for at least the last 6 months that I had been steadily ignoring. Plans that felt less exciting. Conversations that felt more like updates than connection. A feeling like we were running the same script every week without anyone deciding to change it. I had been so focused on what we were building that I hadn't checked in a while on whether we were still building together. That realization wasn't a relief exactly, but it was clarifying. It didn't make what she did okay, but it made me understand that the ending hadn't arrived out of nowhere. I just hadn't been paying attention to the signs. 3 months out from the breakup, my life looked different. Not unrecognizable. Not some Hollywood transformation arc. Just cleaner. I was sleeping better, eating better, working on a project at my job that actually interested me for the first time in a year. I'd gone on 2 dates, nothing serious, just people I'd met through friends, and both had reminded me that I was capable of being charmed and charming again, which felt important to confirm. The story views continued. Every time I posted, she was there, sometimes within minutes. I started to understand what that meant, but I wasn't ready to say it out loud yet, not even to myself. For months after the breakup, I ran into a woman named Petra at a coffee shop. We'd been loosely acquainted through a former coworker, the kind of person you've been introduced to twice and both times had a conversation that went longer than expected. She was sitting alone, working on something on her laptop, and we ended up talking for almost 2 hours. She was sharp and a little dry and laughed at things I didn't expect her to laugh at. We exchanged numbers before I left. I'm not going to rush this part of the story, because Petra deserves more than being a plot device in someone else's story. What I'll say is that we started spending time together slowly, carefully, in a way that feels different when you've recently been through something and you know not to move too fast. She knew I'd recently gotten out of something. I told her early, not to explain myself, but because she asked directly and I respected her enough to be direct back. She didn't make it weird. She just nodded and said, "Then let's just see." And we did. About a week after Petra and I started actually spending regular time together, I posted a photo. Nothing dramatic. A weekend afternoon, a coffee, a book on a table. The kind of photo that says nothing and everything at the same time. She viewed it within 4 minutes. I noticed. I moved on. 2 days later, I posted a photo with Petra. Not a look at my girlfriend post. Just a photo. 2 people at a market, both laughing at something off camera. She viewed it within 3 minutes. And then something happened that I hadn't expected. She sent me a message. After 4.5 months of complete silence. No texts, no calls, nothing. She sent me a message. It said, "Hey, hope you're doing well. Been thinking about you lately." I read it. I put my phone down. I thought about the Tuesday night. About the dinner table. About the photo she posted at 11:47 p.m. Real love always finds its way back. I thought about all of that. And then I went back to the conversation I was already having with Petra and typed what I'd been typing before I was interrupted. I didn't reply to Cass. Not that day. Not the next day. Not ever. I found out what had happened through Garrett, who had maintained a loose peripheral awareness of her life through mutual connections the way people do in a city of a certain size. Owen had left again. Not quietly, either. According to what Garrett had heard, it had lasted about 3.5 months before Owen had essentially cooled off the same way he apparently always did. He was someone, it turned out, who liked the chase more than the arrival, who got warm when something was out of reach and then lost interest once it wasn't. Cass had posted that caption, "Real love always finds its way back," with total conviction. And within the season, that same love had packed up and left again without much explanation. I didn't feel good about that. I want to be clear about that, because it's easy for a story like this to turn into something where the person left behind is gleefully watching the other person's life fall apart. That's not what this is. I felt something closer to a tired kind of recognition. Like, yeah, that tracks. Not because I wanted her to suffer, but because I had known, on some level, that Owen leaving the first time wasn't an anomaly. It was information about who he was, and Cass had chosen to interpret it as a temporary detour instead. You can't argue someone out of a narrative they've decided to believe. You can only wait for reality to do it instead. The story views didn't stop after she messaged me. If anything, they got more consistent. It was almost daily now, sometimes multiple times a day if I posted to my story. I started to understand what was happening on her end. She was watching, not out of malice, not even out of clear intention. She was watching the way people watch something they've given up and then started to wonder about. The way you look at a door you closed and find yourself checking whether it's still closed. I had not reopened that door. I hadn't even stood near it. But I think she needed to see that. Every day, a little more. About a month after her first message, she sent another one. This time longer. She said she'd been doing a lot of thinking. That things with Owen hadn't worked out. She used the phrase, "It just wasn't meant to be," which took real composure for me not to respond to, and that she'd realized over the past few months how much she missed what we had. She said she missed me. She said she thought about our Tuesday nights, the dinner table, the specific shorthand we had developed, the way I knew exactly how she took her coffee without ever having to ask. She said she didn't expect anything. She just wanted me to know. I read it twice, the whole message, and I noticed something. There was not, anywhere in that message, an acknowledgement of what she had actually done. No real accounting of the choice she had made. No recognition of the way she'd made it. Publicly, with a caption designed to make it look like destiny rather than a decision to detour through someone else's feelings. Just, "I miss you." Just, "I've been thinking." Like the gap between then and now was something that had simply happened. A weather event. Something neither of us had any control over. I'm not a person who requires grand gestures or theatrical apologies. But I do require honesty. And the message I got was someone reaching toward what they wanted without fully reckoning with what they'd done to get there. I didn't reply. Petra and I, meanwhile, had quietly become something real. Not rushed. Not loudly announced. Just present. She made me laugh in a specific way. A kind of surprised laugh. The kind where something catches you off guard because it's sharper or stranger than you expected. I hadn't laughed like that in a while before her. She also had no patience for vagueness, which turned out to be exactly what I needed after a relationship where too many things had gone unnamed for too long. When she wanted something, she said it. When something bothered her, she brought it up. Not with drama, just with the casual confidence of someone who had decided a long time ago that honesty was easier than the alternative. Being with someone like that recalibrates you. You start to see what you'd been settling for, not in a way that makes you bitter, but in a way that makes you understand what you actually want. A few weeks after Cass's second message, she sent a third. This one was short. It said, "I know you're not going to reply, but I just need to say it one more time. I'm sorry. For all of it. For the way I handled it. For the post. For everything. I was telling myself a story, and you were the one who paid for it." I read it. Then I read it again. That last line stopped me. I was telling myself a story, and you were the one who paid for it. That was real. That was honest. That was the first thing she'd said in months that actually landed as true rather than as someone repackaging their guilt as longing. I sat with it for a long time. And then I thought about Petra, who was coming over later, who had, over the past couple of months, become someone I looked forward to in the specific and irreplaceable way that you look forward to someone who actually sees you. I thought about the Tuesday nights that had started to feel hollow long before she left. I thought about the specific kind of quiet I'd had to build myself back up from. And I thought about what happens when you go backward, not as a punishment for Cass, not as some act of principled refusal, but just as an honest reckoning with where I was and where going back would take me. I opened her message one more time, and I wrote back. Short, clean, true. I appreciate you saying that. I mean it. But I've moved on, and I'm happy where I am. I genuinely hope you find what you're looking for. I sent it, and then I put my phone in my pocket and started getting ready for the evening. She didn't reply, or maybe she did. I didn't check. Because here's the thing I'd figured out over the past several months. The checking wasn't for her. The checking, the story views, the scrolling, the looking, was never really about the other person. It was always about us. About needing to confirm something. About looking at someone else's life to measure our own. I had done it too, in those first few weeks. And then I'd stopped. Not because I was over it yet, but because I understood that watching someone else's life wouldn't tell me anything about mine. The only way to find out what my life looked like now was to actually live it. What I know now, looking back at all of it, Cass wasn't a villain. She was someone who made a choice that hurt me because she prioritized something she couldn't explain over something she already had. Owen wasn't some monster. He was just someone who wasn't capable of sustaining what he started, which is a human failing, not a character condemnation. And I was someone who had been slowly going numb in a relationship and hadn't done enough to address it, which meant that even if she hadn't left, something was eventually going to surface. The breakup was painful, but it also rerouted me, and the reroute led somewhere better than where I had been going. I saw her once after all of this. Not planned, not staged. We were in the same part of the city, a Sunday afternoon, one of those days where a neighborhood feels like it belongs to everyone who's decided to be outside at once. She was with a friend. I was with Petra. We passed each other on the sidewalk. She saw me first, I think. I saw the recognition move across her face, and then she saw Petra, and I watched her take that in. For a second, nobody did anything. Then I nodded. She nodded back, and we kept walking in opposite directions. Petra didn't ask who that was until we'd turned a corner. I told her it was someone I used to date. She said, "You okay?" I thought about the dinner table, the 11:47 p.m. post, the Tuesday night silence, the months of checking, the text that finally came, the reply I'd given. Yeah, I said. And I meant it. She posted a quote a few weeks later. I only know because Garrett mentioned it, not because I was looking. Something about growth and learning to let go. No caption about love finding its way back this time. Just a quiet, small quote about moving forward. I don't know what to make of that. I'm not sure it's mine to make anything of. What I do know is this. When she made that first post, real love always finds its way back. She was trying to write an ending to a story. A story where leaving me was actually a beautiful thing. Where returning to Owen was destiny rather than a decision. Where everything that happened would eventually make sense in the light of some grand romantic arc. The problem with writing that kind of story in public is that real life doesn't cooperate. Real life kept going, and the ending she'd written didn't hold. The story views eventually stopped. I don't know exactly when. One day I just noticed they weren't there anymore. And I noticed that noticing didn't feel like much of anything. Which is how you know you're actually done. Not when it stops hurting. Not when you stop thinking about it, but when the absence of something you used to look for doesn't even register anymore. When what was once the whole center of your attention becomes just a thing that happened. A chapter, not the book. Petra asked me once, months into what we were building, whether I ever thought about the person I'd been before all of this. I told her yes, but differently than I used to. Before, when I thought about who I was during that relationship, there was something apologetic in it. Like I was looking back at someone who hadn't been paying enough attention. Now it just felt like one version of me that led to the current one. She said, "That's a healthy way to think about it." I said, "I had a lot of time to work on it." She laughed. That surprised laugh. The one I'd started to live for. And here's the last thing I'll say about all of it. That Tuesday night when she left, and I sat alone in my apartment in the quiet that follows something irreversible. I thought I was sitting at an ending. I was actually sitting at the beginning. I just didn't know it yet. And she was the one who opened the door. I just had to have the sense to walk through it. She posted that love always finds its way back. She was right, just not the way she meant it.